We are the Keyboard Samurai, a podcast focused on sharing insights to help those working in cybersecurity companies, be them technology or services. Each session, your host, Will Klusovsky, aka Will Clue, sits down with professionals in our industry to illuminate topics that will help your security biz, team, or self be better. Let's hack into it now. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining. Will here. And I've got Chris with me. So, Chris, let me give you 20, 30 seconds to tell us who you are and why we care.
Ooh, who I am and why we care. I love that, man. Absolutely. So in a nutshell, I'm Chris. I'm a marketing strategist turned go-to-market strategist, and go-to-market meaning marketing and sales and customer success. My background really is helping clients, typically early stage SaaS startups, cybersecurity companies as well, and overlap there, of course, helping them really establish their growth functions and their growth marketing programs and really drive growth overall from them. So, I did that first on the agency side for a while. And then most recently, over the past year, I've been doing that in a consultant-like capacity. So I'm super pumped to talk to you today, man.
Good. Yeah, I think we're going to have, I know obviously we've chatted before in the past, but marketing and cybersecurity is something I'm very passionate about, as I think it has to be handled differently than a lot of, like you need to have a little bit of knowledge in cybersecurity to be able to market it properly, and your clients are a little bit different. And you know what, I'm answering my own question. So the first question I was going to ask you is, so marketing and cybersecurity, what's the big difference? Why is it different, or is it different than any other industry?
Oh, I definitely think it's different. I've worked with a lot of different verticals, B2C, B2B, D2C, in my career. B2B specifically the last bunch of years. So while, I've been working primarily with cybersecurity, but also some fintech, some reg tech. Regardless, any company that is that has like a benevolence behind kind of like the purpose that they exist, right? Cybersecurity is meant to help. It's meant to protect, all of those different things. And for me, I think, the people that work in the industry are much more passionate for what they do, which makes complete sense. Again, I mean, how do you not feel proud of the work that you do, regardless of what you're doing? Even as a lowly marketing strategist, the fact that you actually have a positive impact on the world rather than selling something in a more, let's say, nefarious industry, right? So like, I think a lot of it comes from the passion and pride of the people in the industry themselves. And for me, they're not that they're not fun, but they don't have a lot of time. And they right, obviously they're busy. The daily life of a CxO is the busiest person you'll ever meet, right? So like, you need to be very thoughtful and respectful, not just in terms of how you communicate with them, but everything, every interaction, every piece of content. I'm not saying that one bad interaction is enough to just ruin the potential for a business forever, but I'm also not saying that. And I've heard that from many people, and that are being honest, because again, if you're not being considerate and thoughtful in your outreach, I mean, you're just wasting their time, and they don't have time to waste. So for me, you have to get it right, and that necessitates a lot of things that you don't have to do in, let's say, other industries.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and someone who sat on both sides of the table, I understand. I understand there's different personality types, but I like the way you said, time is valuable, very limited. So most people in that CISO, or even CIO, CFO, like anybody you're marketing security to, most of those people don't have the time. Your content has to be direct, quick, easily digestible. I think some people forget that a lot. Every now and then, sure, we want to sit down and read something that's entertaining and verbose, but no, most of the time, if you're getting a CISO's eyes on a piece of content for, their expectations in 3 to 5 minutes, I'm going to be able to read this and be done with it and do something about it. They don't want to. If they want to spend time reading a story, they'll go read a story.
For sure. The attention, whether it's attention span, the ability to have the time, any of those different things. Yeah, we really have to make sure that everything comes across in like 2 seconds. If you're looking at a LinkedIn ad, 2 seconds, look, value, take away, go. Whether they click, anything else doesn't even matter. Being able to really provide value that quickly, which, again, if you're not a marketer, that's very difficult to do, right? But you're not going to guarantee you get any more time of theirs than that, which is, of course, a
interesting.
challenge.
So that's kind of like because LinkedIn, I think, is the most obvious place for most of us to do our advertising and marketing. And so like 2 seconds is about it. So it really is that headline. Like, do I want to click read more or not?
Yeah, I mean, right. It's like the goal. I mean, we all know the goal. It's a cliche. It's stop the scroll, right? We have to stop the scroll. I'm more active on LinkedIn than many. You are considerably more than me. But the point is, we see a lot of things when we're going through our feed, right? we're there in some way on an overarching level, perhaps to learn, right? I'm always, I want to see content that makes me learn more about marketing or sales or security, whatever it is. We're there to learn, but sometimes that learning can be a paid thing, right? So ultimately, like if we're thinking of ourselves as our end user, like I'm open. If I was a CISO, I'm open to the idea of getting advertised to, let's call it that. I just think that how you do that needs to be, it has to catch my attention, but it also needs to be that immediately digestible thing, right? It's like once you get to communicate up to the line and whatever you're doing in business, like to the CEO, once that message gets built and it goes all the way up, it gets more and more brief and it needs to be delivered, boom. And the message needs to be salient, clear, and you can just go away with it. And oh, cool. I know what you're talking about. Again, easier said than done.
That's a great point. I actually thought about it that way. Like the higher up you go, the more succinct it needs to be, which is the same thing. Like those of us, like even if you're, in the industry of security services, or if you're in the business of, delivering it for yourself or for your business, that same thing happens there too, right? The analyst has all of this information, which the manager now needs this much, the director needs this much. By the time it gets to the board, it's part of a bullet point, right?
Exactly. It's something that is challenging. I find it challenging inherently for myself, being verbose, right, and a bit of a talker. But like it's that quote I heard recently, like too much detail makes you look junior. And that quote can transcend so many different areas that you can take that into how you are doing internal marketing, how you're speaking with other stakeholders, other functions. But you also could take that in terms of how you were speaking to your end user, how you're speaking to your buyers, right? You have to know something really, really well. And then a couple other things have to be there in the equation too. But you have to know it really well to be able to deliver it in that level of clarity, that high level, if you will.
That's the Feynman. If you can't explain it shortly, then you don't understand it.
Yeah, that's a frustrating thing, right? Because sometimes as I'm learning something, I think, oh, I'm starting to get this. Like I am, and me, I'm a confident dude. I get into a rhythm, and now I'm feeling good. And then I realize I try to let my let's say my litmus is talking to my wife about it. Now I'm going to explain it to her, and I'm stumbling, man, and I'm not delivering it like the way I want it, and I'm just like, oh, damn it, I don't have it. It's not there yet, because it really does take time. It's like I think that you have to know like at least twice as much as you think you do to deliver that message in a way that's going to have an impact. That's not to throw out arbitrary numbers, but
but that's right. Because I do the same thing, and mostly because a lot of times I'm talking to people who don't understand it. And so it's and I can very much tell when I say something to someone and they don't understand it. Then you have to go and explain it, versus if I'm trying to get the attention of a CISO or a VP of security, or the people I'm trying to market to. I have to assume that they know all these things and not explain it, right?
Yeah, because then you could infantilize, if you will. Tell me something I don't know, buddy. It's hard to reach these people, right? That's another area of it. We don't want to explain anything to them that should be like inherent, but we also how do we know when to make assumptions or not? Research, of course, but it's a test.
So that kind of leads me to another question, which is as I think about that the over explaining part, I guess, is kind of like something that I see a lot of from marketing content is or even sales content, which is still marketing content, but you go to present to the CISO and you're like, here's all the stats about security and why you need to care, and it's like, we all know this. Like, you don't need to tell the CISO that the average breach is $4.8 million or it's $9 million in the United States, and that multi-cloud security is going to be really complicated because there's more, like all of this sort of, layman level. So as I say all of that you and I know are kind of the wrong things to do, what's something you kind of see security firms maybe doing wrong? Like all of them are doing it wrong, maybe, or consistently, like maybe at the begining stages, it takes a while to feel like, what's kind of some of those common things that people can kind of look at now and be like, I need to fix that.
Yeah, it's a great question. A lot of it comes down to the content itself and when to deliver the content, what types of content to create, right? Like we're all taught there's a funnel, or at least that's maybe a GDM model ago was the funnel, and getting people into it and adding more at the top and working them down in all of those different ways, right? I don't think of it, so we've talked about this, Will. I think of it more in that modern, help the buyer, forget the mid funnel where you're gating ebooks and everything like that, and just if you could find ways with list building tools to get the contact information, help the buyer, right? But ultimately, there's two different areas that are going to be, to me, let's call it life cycle stage wise. There's awareness, where you really have to ensure that people know who you are, but also associate your brand. I would say, to go a step farther, your brand with the category, with the solution. Like, I believe, this is a newer thought for me and things that I've been reading, but I truly believe like brand awareness is not, puffy brand activations. It's awareness of the company, of the brand, and that you
what do you actually do
product. Yeah, because otherwise, like, okay, so this is a common, certain companies I've spoken with have this issue. It's like, everyone knows who we are. These are larger companies. They know who we are, but they don't know that we do anything that we want them to know that we do. They know the legacy. They don't know anything new. That's a huge challenge. So ultimately, like, the way you split up your content, you have to think of it like that. Like, you can talk product and what are things could be lower in the funnel related to the product itself, the solution itself. You can talk about that earlier. You should be. They'll thank you for it. Don't try to sell them on it early, but educate them about it. Like, while they're getting to know your company, they should also be getting to know your product. I firmly believe that. And then ultimately over time, and there's ways that you can measure this, of course, and you have to be honest with your measurements and not try to get anyone to do anything they don't want to do naturally. But over time, like, you're going to get an idea of the people that really are starting to, they know who you are. Let's be honest. They know who you are. They know your product. I'm not saying they're ready to buy from you, but they're at a point where that perhaps if they were buying, they would consider you now. So like, that type of content is very different, and it's really, in a lot of ways, I think we overcomplicate everything. That's an overarching problem with marketing and security and security marketing. We do. But like, the value of a great case study that is a successful engagement with the same types of buyers that you're selling to, and you atomize that and you get great footage and you have a podcast, maybe when you're talking about it, there's other content that's spin-off. I mean, you tell me, man, like, that's the type of stuff that's going to get people to be like, oh, I mean, it's so obvious. This is how I could win if I worked with them. Those types of content pieces. Start simply too. I mean, really, I think that's extremely, extremely important. We go crazy when it comes to creating content. We often create more of it than we probably need. Not to say that I don't believe firmly in creating a ton of content, but the right content, because again, that takes a lot of time to create that. So I feel like it's really ensuring that you're creating the right content and you're making sure it gets distributed, because that's the low-hanging fruit. That is not something that I see done very effectively by most security companies.
Yeah, I like that a lot. It resonates with me quite a bit too, as I think about sort of all the challenges I've had over my time, and even still do. Like, you still run into kind of the same things over and over again. It's having that that I like the idea of like, hey, let's make it about the customer or the client, right? I actually was on another show a couple days. It's all running together now, but that was kind of one of the things we talked about when you talk about client journey and understanding that, like, the client is at the heart of your of your service, of your product, whatever it is you're going to be doing. Like, they're the reason for everything being around and even existing. So like, that's who you need to focus on.
Oh, 100%. And I think we've talked about this in the past, me and you. You would think that the entire business and business strategy would be built around an ICP or a set of ICPs, as it should be. And every single thing about that business, from the product to the GTM, every little aspect is optimized based on feedback from the people you're trying to help, that you're trying to sell to. You would like that to be table stakes, but it's not something that we always see is the case. Like, how do you build a marketing strategy when the company, this is not a case study I would want to do, but how do you build a marketing strategy for a company when the company doesn't understand their buyer? Can you prove product market fit? How do you communicate with someone you don't understand and you don't even know if they're the right person? Like, that's pretty impossible. And unfortunately, you would think, well, okay, that hopefully is a fairly rare issue, because I mean, it's almost
that's where like the use cases help, right? It's the easiest thing in the world to just tell a story about work you've done already, and then
what totally is,
and then to be able to say, well, these are our clients and these are the stories we're having. You don't have to go into a complicated ICP thing. Just look at the stories that you're willing to tell, and they're like, that's probably our client profile.
It's, once again, I think it ties back to that overcomplicating things. We're not in B2C where we're building out a 100-page like brand identity for the person who's buying Mountain Dew, right? This is not B2C. We need to have granular information. Don't get me wrong. We need to know and understand these people enough to speak to them. But like, this does not need to be some formal thing that an agency charges you $20,000 to do. It does require getting the right people in a room and documenting it. And actually, most importantly, I would argue, making sure that doc is breathing. That shouldn't be left on a drive to gather dust, right? And then I'm looking at this, it's like, wait a second, I know that we changed ICP like 5 times since this, like when I'm doing a project brief, right? Like, you can't do that. It has to be constantly optimized and constantly updated based on what you're hearing, which I think is honestly, I always tie back to as an opportunity to just I don't know how you do it with so many silos existing throughout an organization, but how do you have the cliched flywheel of customer feedback collected everywhere and distributed everywhere and optimized everywhere? I mean, it's key that is something that works, but we just need to do a better job at creating those environments.
I think the challenge that a lot of people have now, this is kind of my soapbox to the listening audience of this. It's like, you know, the roles that we, you know, like that. And then for everybody who doesn't, like, that's what I do. Like, I'm a translator between all these areas. So it's very easy for me to go and talk to the technology people and help convert that into something sales and marketing can use. That's not always the role that exists in a bunch of companies. And you don't have to have a specific role to it, but if you don't, then you have to have time commitments from, and even then, like I would, if I'm writing a piece about identity, I still need to go talk to the identity practice lead, and I need to get details from them that are specific. It's okay that I understand it, but we need it to resonate with whoever we're trying to communicate with. And so that,
absolutely,
I say all that because, you know, people, there's it's an underserved area, right? Being able to find somebody, even just getting a copywriter to talk to the technical person is not always going to work.
No, I mean, there's I mean, it's the liaison term, right? There needs to be a bridge who speaks both languages, right? And that's not necessarily going to be easy. It doesn't have to be someone with your technical savvy, for example, but like you have to at least have some working knowledge of the subject matter to talk with the technical person, and translating it to copy. Well, honestly, the copywriters can be a strategist too, right? I mean, we all could wear a lot of hats, but that has to be that type of copywriter who actually could understand then, at least through working with someone like you. Typically, right, how kind of we did it in the past is like you would be that person, but then I would take it and it would translate through me to copy. I couldn't exist doing what I do without you kind of serving as that.
Right.
The taking, you know, the very technical content, technical thoughts, and obviously distilling it down and call it taxonomy for, you know, you were kind of wearing a products marketing hat, you know, but now
that's kind of what I'm getting, like that product marketing role, which is I guess really what we're talking about. A lot of organizations ignore that, or they only focus on one aspect of the, like, you know, the ability to do copywriting and grammar and editing, or the technical person. Like, you know, there's, I say all that because usually that whole, when people are laying off, it's never the billable resources that get laid off, and the marketing leadership and the marketing sort of like the workers stuff's going to happen. But all that stuff in the middle that makes it all work on both sides is technically where they look to cut.
And it's remarkable too, because it's cohesive, right? In the same way, I think of it as in the same way as like, how do we go to market? You know, marketing will create a buzz and demand, and sales will capture and convert it. Customer success will keep it, retain it, grow it, expand it, whatever, right? It's the same type of thing, you know, like ultimately we need to be the ones to do that. Yeah, it's I'm
gonna bounce over here because it was funny when you were talking about like the brand, even like knowing what we do. Like I've had conversations, like 3 or 4 conversations in the last month about the same thing. I won't say any names, but there's people who are like, oh, I'm looking to buy a tool to manage my GRC. I'm looking at blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, those aren't tools to manage GRC. They do something different. But you've heard the name and you know who they are, so you've got brand recognition. So you'll go, and then I said, and that's a challenge for both sides, because those companies are going to get people asking them to do stuff that's not really what they were built for, and they don't want to turn the sale down. And then at the same time, these people could be looking at the other products that were more purpose built for.
It's true. My mind is like goes 2 places. Like, then kind of create a new channel. Then you're going to keep those customers more happy, profit off it if you do a little channel partner related program there, if it's not that similar or something along those lines. Because I know, I mean. And that's also our responsibility too, to tell that story. We have to, it's like, look, if the brand is not responsible for communicating to the market and getting them to know who we are and what we do, what we're all about, why we do it, like that's like why we exist, right? We have to do that. Can't be upset at the brand, even if people are defaulting to the category leader simply because they know who they are.
Right.
I get it. You know, it's not easy to do this, but like, you got to win it, man, right? You have to win the ability to get known for what it is that you do. Knowing how to do it isn't the most complicated aspect. It's actually going out there and doing it in a, let's say, a timely manner, which is obviously very rare too for a lot of
well, and any firm will tell you that. Like, that's like every firm that's ever started knows what should know what they're going to do and how they're going to solve the problem.
Yes.
So communicating that out. And then again, like making sure that people understand it. Like that's the other thing you've got to, I look at it, it's the same thing with trash cans in state parks. You know, that mantra of like, you have to make something that's complicated enough the bears can't figure it out, but easy enough that stupid humans can, right?
Yeah.
And so you've got the same thing where we have a level of expectation, like, okay, we know we're targeting CISOs, CIOs, VPs of security or whatever, but they're all not created equally, right? And especially if you're not looking at a certain market. So I have to make it, smart enough that I don't talk down to them, but also like, detailed enough that they're interested in it. And that sweet spot's got to be hard to do.
Oh yeah, I mean, this just popped into my mind, and it's an audacious like idea, but I'd like want to throw it out there just because I think it'll be fun. But like, so are you familiar with like the product-led growth concept, where like some organizations don't have they don't have sales teams, marketing sells in terms of the experiences they kind of bake into everything that they do, right?
I've talked to a couple companies that do that very well, actually. So.
Yeah, and I feel like there's this bias that it's because, and I get why, when ticket sizes exceed 6 figures and they go into like that type of range, like, oh, this product and I'll get my opinion out. There's an arbitrary threshold that a lot of people think like product-led growth doesn't work above this particular point, which is probably anything above like 30, 40, 50 grand if I had to guess ACV for their product from what I've heard, right? But like, what I like about PLG is it forces you to be really damn good. You need to do your homework. You need to do your research. You need to provide an experience that's going to go from education through conversion, and it needs to be all thought out and architected ahead of time and beautifully. Right? It is something that forces you to be your best.
Right.
You're down. Look, you're playing in the fourth quarter, and you're down by 30. It's game 7. You need to. This is the time. It's crunch time, right? It forces you to be your best. So I sometimes like taking the hard route, and I sometimes feel like, the harder it is, the more likely you're going to be able to find something that actually truly works, and you can measure it accordingly. Obviously, we talked about this a lot.
That's super interesting to me, and I like it because I look at it like you can invest a lot of time and effort in training your sales team. You can invest a lot of time and effort in getting your marketing super clean. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like those are, and they're both just as challenging and take probably just as much effort. So it's a matter of, like you said, being able to squeeze out that right amount.
Tell me it's not a potential test for what to do with the SDR, which is something else that's always talked about in the industry. Where do they live? How do they spend their time? How do they want to spend their time? Not just like, how can we get value from them as an org, but like, how do we help them progress their career so maybe they stay with us for a while and churn less, right? Maybe they become, as we talked about, content marketers too. Those roles could be served by either. Theoretically, I find that the skill set's very translatable. I started in sales. Now I'm in marketing, again, not really that different.
Yeah. Most of the content that I would create gets communicated to the SDRs at some point. In fact, most organizations I worked at, that's where I spend, whether we had SDRs or whoever was doing the door kicking, I spent a lot of time with them on that education process. Like that's a big part of that.
Makes sense. It's harder in security because we're very, our end users are technical, right?
Well, it's easier it's such a big category too. So unless you have like a niche product, then that's fine. But like, if you're a services org or a managed services org.
Oh my Lord. Yeah. I sometimes just, I wonder how many mid-market MSSPs there are with the same suite of managed platform and professional services. My Lord. And I get the PTSD from the drop downs on the nav, right? I can just see 4,000 options and be like, I don't know what you do. MSSP says it all, but like, does it though? Right. And it's fascinating.
Oh, I could talk about this forever, but I think that's a great stopping point, Chris. It was great having you. Where can everybody find you on the interwebs?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think my tag on LinkedIn. I think it's Christopher-Goodman 007 because I'm a James Bond dude. Yeah, like follow me for anything growth marketing, GTM, a sprinkle of sports. Yeah, always happy to talk cybersecurity and marketing and anything.
Great.
Thanks
for having me. Thanks.
Thanks for enjoying Keyboard Samurai Podcast. If you'd like to engage, find Will on LinkedIn at /WillClue or visit at willclue.me. That's WILKLU.me for more info. Disconnecting now. Synac you later.